This podcast is brought to you by Icon Foods. Icon Foods sells natural sweeteners that will help you clean up your nutrition label without sacrificing flavor. Head over to iconfoods.com to find out more, and don't forget to mention that the Peas on Moss podcast sent you. Dan Kurzrock, co-founder of ReGrained, and Dr. Jonathan Deutsch, chef professor at Drexel University, each returned to the podcast to give us some more details about the Upcycled Food Association and their work in the early days of the association. Founded in just 2019, the Young Trade Association has gained quick traction through the intersection of addressing food waste and inviting the consumer to be more involved in supporting innovative brands that are seeking ways to use wholesome food ingredients in packaged foods before those items are written off as waste. Dan shares an update about ReGrained bars, Super Grain Plus, and their brand new puff snacks, as well as shares some of the heart behind the upcycled foods movement. Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of the Peas on Moss podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Schaub, and I am here with a co-founder of ReGrained, Dan Kurzrock, who was a guest from a Peas on Moss podcast episode from several years ago. And Dan and I are catching up because years have gone by and getting an update about ReGrained. So welcome back, Dan.
Yeah, thank you for having me back, Kimberly. And I cannot believe it's been 2 years. The upcycling market has come a long way, though, and so it's been really exciting on a lot of fronts. And times are crazy right now. We're recording this for those listening. I don't know when it's going to be posted in the middle of COVID lockdown. So good to have an opportunity to just distract ourselves by thinking about something really positive. So thanks for that.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right that we are in the middle of probably the biggest thing that's going to change how we look at our industry and how we experience the industry from the inside and as consumers. And I think it's the best time for us to start really thinking about shopping and eating differently. And it seems like the ReGrained brand is going to be part of that new way of thinking and doing. So tell us, what have you at ReGrained been up to for the last little while?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that sentiment. We certainly hope to be part of the solution. So yeah, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what we do, ReGrained is a brand, but we're also an ingredient company. And what we specialize in is upcycling, which is basically the practice of taking a look at overlooked, underutilized ingredients and making sure that they go to the best use. And the best use for food is feeding people. And so we are really focused right now on the brewing industry and taking the grain that they've already used to brew beer. And we turn that into a really high fiber and also there's a decent amount of protein, really tasty, functional ingredient that we call Super Grain Plus. It is kind of like a flour, can be used in a lot of different ways. And we put that into our own products and also sell it to other companies to create upcycled products. Now, upcycling, the philosophy here is to support a food system that can do more with less, to improve the way that we value resources by putting by keeping as much food in the food system as possible. So it's kind of a win-win across the board, because what we're seeing in the industry more and more so in the last few years is that the shoppers, consumers, increasingly are looking for products that taste great, but that also are better for them and also are better for the planet. And by when upcycling is done well, it is products that are more marketable for those reasons. And then of course for the end customer, they're getting more options to eat with their values and make an impact through their everyday choices and say what matters to them. And that's a bit of a rambly answer, Kimberly. I apologize for going on and on there, but I mean, something that we're super passionate about is helping people make a difference through snacking, and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, and so ReGrained bars went through a package design change fairly recently, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that was actually driven by one of the things we were very idealistic, I guess I would say. Here, very values driven, and we were trying to for many years to make compostable packaging work. So we weren't creating packaging waste, plastic waste, while we were addressing food waste. And unfortunately, discovered that our packaging was making our products go stale in the distribution truck. And so we were ironically creating food waste, trying to solve packaging waste. And we had to take a big step back. And we needed a way to communicate that. And we also were launching a new product line that actually just launched last month in the middle of March 2020, a line of puffed chips. And we were starting to do more B2B as well. And so we kind of took a big step back and looked at our brand, and we needed to make this change anyways to our wrappers. And so we decided to take a look at how we want to communicate ReGrained, more broadly as not just a single product, but as this, like the word platform to describe what we're doing, because it really is. There's a lot of different, I guess, permutations of how ReGrained can on shelf. And so what we did was we created a logo that there's a lot of arrows, like kind of nod to upcycling. We created a logo actually for upcycling that other companies are starting to use now, to indicate that upcycled. And we also introduced a new tagline, which, we used to put "Eat Beer," and a great way to get people's attention and a lot of fun to have on a t-shirt, especially when you're walking around a trade show or something like that. You get stopped and people say, "Oh, eat beer, what's that?" You're walking down the street, people will shout at you for, "Oh, beer, cool, bro," stuff like that. It was a lot of fun, but actually we learned that it confused people at shelf. And so our new tagline is "Eat Up," is a nod as well to upcycling, this idea of finishing your food, eating up, and also we hope people want to eat up because it's so delicious and good for them that they can't help but do anything else. So that's a bit of what that kind of change represented for us. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that our packaging now is very fun. There's a lot of illustrations. It's very active, a very different look and feel than the more minimal design that we had before. And a big part of that was just wanting to have some fun with it, but also wanting to stand out on shelf more too, because there's nothing really that looks like what we developed out there today. And so we hope that it grabs folks' attention, and we earn the opportunity for them to pick up a bag and look on the other side and really see what we're all about, how excited as we are.
Yeah, I really liked the way that you took the artwork and unified across your brand. So you did kind of a double-headed marketing launch there, in the sense of the bars design reflects the overall look and feel of the new puffs that you created. So it really does show a connection between the two products through your brand. And I really actually liked the infographic sort of style of the upcycling effort that your team is going through with the ingredients. So you can kind of see, this is how this process would work. And so it, as a consumer, it really helped connect me with what your vision was and kind of what the impetus of the founding of the brand was. I also do really appreciate how you tied in the upcycled concept, as well as the Upcycled Food Association design into it, because then you're helping consumers buy in and engage with upcycled food immediately, and it's very obvious that they're participating in it.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, and yeah, really appreciate that. The upcycled logo on our package was actually developed first, and then what we ended up doing when we met Turner, and I understand you interviewed for this show as well, and co-found the Upcycled Food Association. We ended up donating that logo to the association to use, because we want to help create this standard, identity for the upcycled movement. And through some market research and testing, we found that our design was most well received by consumers to communicate this new term for a very approachable and familiar idea of upcycling, of not wasting. It's been great getting that out there and seeing the response, and really just trying to get everyone aligned and kind of rowing the boat in the same direction.
So yeah, talk to me about the Upcycled Food Association. Turner certainly shared the mission and vision statement that the association members had formed together. But as I understand it, the association is a collection of food businesses whose ingredients or mission address food waste. And a lot of the brands that I saw on the list seem to be earlier stage companies. Is that just because manufacturing of upcycled ingredients is a relatively new activity in the industry, and that's why most of the brands are young? Or why is that, do you think?
Yeah, it's a great kind of line of questioning there. Yeah, so the objective, so the Upcycled Food Association, it's a nonprofit, it's a trade organization, and it exists to support the development of markets for upcycled ingredients. It is a piece of the food waste puzzle that is really well suited to be solved by enterprise, by business interests, because what you're doing, most crudely put, is you are turning trash into money, right? It can't be. It's a little more complicated than that when you actually put that into practice. But at its core, this is a perfect opportunity for business to get into. In a lot of ways, Kimberly, upcycling is not the newest of ideas. What we're doing now is finding opportunities that have been previously overlooked to conduct upcycling, and we have now a way of talking about it. Whey from cheesemaking is one of the best examples, historically, of upcycling, where it just made dollars and cents to be punny to close the loop. When you make cheese, you've got this byproduct called whey, and cheesemakers used to have a hard time getting rid of it. But now, in the last few decades, a market has really emerged for this whey protein. That now there's whey producers where cheese is the byproduct. It's kind of interesting, I think. Another example could be arguably baby carrots. Right? Baby carrots don't grow as little tiny carrots. Baby carrots were made out of cosmetically imperfect carrots that were not going to make it to market otherwise. And so the processing method of basically trimming them into those little, carrot sticks is could be argued to be upcycling. I've had people to me argue that hot dogs are upcycled. Kind of gross to think about.
Ooh,
but if you look at the meat industry, there is a very, very long history of using everything but the steel, so to speak, right? And as an upcycling movement, what sets us apart is that upcycling is also a philosophy, and it is dedicated to environmentalism at its core, and to not just fighting food waste, but creating tangible benefits to the environment and to society. And so, as opposed to something like a hot dog, which is I would argue not upcycled because of wasn't done with that intention. I can compare that to something like ReGrained, where we are discovering all the overlooked and underutilized ingredients out there, applying really innovative processing. We actually have a patent on the way that we do that, and culinary science and product development to figure out the best ways that these ingredients can be used, and literally closing the loop to bring new ingredients into the food system. So one of the things that we're really dedicated to at ReGrained is use a platform or a megaphone to trumpet out this message of, hey, let's reduce waste at home too. You may not realize this, but these are some really easy things that you can do in your day-to-day life that will help you reduce your waste footprint. And so, we're not going to solve this problem just by eating upcycled alone, although we want people to eat as many upcycled products as they possibly can. But we want them to be thinking about the lifestyle around zero waste. And zero waste is really a journey more than a destination. It's about looking at the different things that can be the different choices that are made throughout the course of the day, throughout the course of the week, throughout the course of a year that can dramatically reduce an individual's waste footprint. Just find these like little opportunities to do more with. And more and more people start thinking about it. I'm pretty diehard about it. I don't expect everyone to be like that, but maybe we can emerge from this crisis with some better habits, and that would be really encouraging.
Yeah, I agree. Peas on Moss will be right back. Peas on Moss is celebrating its 4th year of podcasting and 10th year of blogging. Each year is a record of the journey I started from culinary school to restaurants and eventually to R&D. Throughout the journey, I have met incredible mentors and friends who have helped me grow in this journey. This podcast is my way to connect with product development professionals and chefs and work together to create our legacy as the people who bring great food to consumers around the world. We are a small community, we who create and serve food, whether that's a daily food service or in packaged products. The coronavirus pandemic has struck us hard, but I've been amazed by how we've come together to support wherever we can. I hope this podcast helps our community stay connected as we weather these challenging days. If you can contribute to your community and fellow chefs, do, but your presence and encouragement can also brighten dark moments. Let's come together, respecting, encouraging, and contributing for a healthier future. If you're able to donate, there are various nonprofits for restaurant and hospitality industry workers, including World Central Kitchen, Mercy Chefs, Big Table, and the James Beard Foundation Food and Beverage Industry Relief Fund. Find out about your local community efforts to support small food businesses and continue to be active. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person at a future conference, but for now, I am proud to be able to still bring you these podcast episodes and am grateful for the support and friendship of this community. Welcome back to Peas on Moss. The mentality of using upcycled food hasn't always been an easy process, and Dr. Jonathan Deutsch talks to us about early attitudes about using upcycled ingredients. He shares about subsequent research done at Drexel University focused on consumer perceptions about upcycled products, the standardization of the term upcycled, and opportunities for future research. We also discuss the risk of upcycled becoming just another bug for brands to add to their packages and the need for true transparency in food product claims. Consumers have demonstrated interest in products with missions, as Patagonia Provisions has also demonstrated, and the way we'll continue to see changes in the industry is through changes in consumer behavior and purchasing decisions, as well as the brands they choose to support.
My name is Jonathan Deutsch. I'm a professor of food and hospitality management in the College of Nursing and Health Professions at Drexel University in Philadelphia.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Peas on Moss podcast for an encore episode. I had so much fun getting to know your background and experience in our first episode, and I'll post the link to that recording in our show notes. But Jonathan, thank you so much for coming back.
So glad to be here.
So one of the very interesting things that is happening at Drexel University in research is the Drexel involvement with the food upcycling movement. And I wanted to really take the time to dig into what that looks like, both from the concept of upcycling and then really what Drexel University is doing with it.
Sure. We've been involved in upcycling really before it was called upcycling. It's amazing how things have changed over the last few years.
So when the Drexel team started to look at um, ways to suggest utilization of foods that were going to the shelters and moving these ingredients further upstream to the retailer, the wholesaler, the processor, and the farmer, what did that work look like?
Yeah, it was one of our first upstream clients and interactions was Thomas McQuillan from Baldor, who's really made a name for himself as a leader in the sort of sustainable food space. And Baldor's a specialty food restaurant supplier, pretty high end stuff. And they do a lot of fresh cut produce. And one of our first projects was Baldor started saving the scraps from their fresh cut program, and they worked with a commercial dryer to make it into a vegetable powder and recover that nutrition. The irony, as we know as cooks, is that the majority of the nutrients and the fiber in most produce comes from that outer covering, and that's exactly the part that gets thrown away in a fresh cut produce operation. So it was really progressive of Thomas to lead this drawing program, which he called Sparks, which is scraps spelled backwards. So he branded selling the scraps from his fresh cuts, and this dried vegetable powder was one of his first products. But the big question was, okay, that's wonderful. You have all this nutrition, you have all this sustainability, and you're recovering your food waste. But what do you actually do with it? How can you actually make it delicious? So one of our very first projects in this area, which was led by Ali Zeitz, who's now the R&D chef at a coffee chain called Saxby's, a regional coffee and restaurant chain. She led a sort of student competition to come up with some ideas for this. And they came up with all sorts of ideas, carrot cakes and quinoa fritters, and they used it as a breading for chicken as part of the breading system. And one of the big positive outcomes was we were able to develop a school breakfast muffin that delivered a full serving of vegetables using this vegetable powder. And it was sort of almost like a carrot cake kind of concept, but it used this dried vegetable upcycled powder. And I think that really got people interested that here's a product that improves school nutrition, does it affordably, does it sustainably, and kind of dings every bell. And while that product, I don't think is that appealing or that sexy, I think it was a good sort of proof of concept that there's a lot more potential in upcycling than we may realize. And actually that project has now further morphed, and they're using pomace from applesauce production to make an apple muffin. And Commonwealth Kitchen, which is based in Boston, had been doing that for the Boston Public Schools. I don't know what's happening with that now, with schools closed, but all of these have been really interesting models to kind of advance the field.
That is interesting. The proof of concept, I think, is perhaps one of the first hurdles that probably anyone thinking of a food product in general has to get a proof of concept. But getting buy-in on upcycled food or reclaimed, rescued, salvaged, all of the other terminology that used to be kind of explored along with the term upcycled, that proof of concept could be harder to develop because you're trying to convince a consumer or a manufacturer to use something that we would have considered waste to start with.
Yeah, when we started in this area, we had heard a lot of naysaying from the food industry, and there were kind of two or three concerns, some of which we're still grappling with. One was everyone seemed to go right to the pink slime story. Do you remember the pink slime scandal, sort of in quotes, years ago? Where something that really would be seen as good manufacturing practice, right? Mechanically separating any bits of meat from the bones after slaughter and turning it into ground beef, would be seen as sustainable and good business. But because of the way it was portrayed and because of a lack of transparency on the part of the manufacturer, it was seen as some disgusting scandal, right? So the first thing we would hear is, well, I don't want my food product to be another pink slime. I don't want people seeing my the pulp from my juice or the Okara from my soy milk or something like that being the new pink slime. The second thing we heard was, I don't want a discount. If consumers know about this stuff, they're gonna expect a discount on everything. And what we did, we worked with our marketing folks at Drexel, Raj Suri and Siddharth Bhatt, who was his PhD student at the time, and Hassan Ayaz from our School of Biomedicine. And we did a pretty extensive study of consumer perceptions of upcycled products. And one of the very first studies we did was just what to call these things. And that paper turned out to be really influential in settling on the term upcycled. So we tested a bunch of terms: rescued, salvaged, reprocessed, upcycled, repurposed, and upcycled was the clear winner. You look at the graph and you wouldn't believe how many more people prefer upcycled to all those other terms. And that's one of the things that influenced the adoption of the term. Of course, it was being used anyway, but having kind of the basis for that was important. And the other big thing we found was that with a little bit of consumer education, and we're not talking about a webinar, we're talking about a phrase on a package that says, upcycled, or in small print on the label, upcycled products use food that would otherwise have been wasted. That level of education will get people excited about buying upcycled products. And contrary to the conventional wisdom, they may even pay more for an upcycled product if manufacturers are upfront about the fact that this is upcycled. And it appeals to not just the sort of whole food shopper, but a wide variety of consumers who see environmental benefit, who see flavor benefit, who see some kind of a coolness factor, a cachet to upcycled products.
I think that's really key. Such a significant finding that, one, consumer attitude can be shaped by the way that we message a mission, and that we can help the consumer understand why we're doing something in the industry. The other is that the Upcycled Food Association's phrasing of what they're working on and what they're trying to address by addressing climate change through managing food waste, it's an invitation for the consumer to get involved. So not only is she buying a novel food product and potentially paying a premium for the fact that it's something that's new and it's something that takes some effort to reclaim in some sense. Mm-hmm. It's an invitation to be part of that in a way that doesn't actually require a lot of heavy lifting from the consumer's perspective.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when we ask consumers about their perceptions of upcycled, one of the things we did was we compared it to conventional products and organic products. And we had kind of two interesting learnings from that. One was they don't see it as either. They don't see upcycled as sort of a conventional plus. and they don't see it as an organic plus or minus. They see it as its own category, a unique, distinct category of food, which is really important information for culinologists and marketers. And the other thing is, if you ask them to estimate what they would pay for some of these products, they put it closer to organic and above conventional, typically. So, and that changes a little bit by category. But if you say, like, here's a pasta sauce, a sort of, generic white label pasta sauce, and you say, how much would you pay for this, knowing it's a conventional pasta sauce? Let's say a consumer might say, well, I would expect this to be $1.99. Okay, great. And what if you heard it was organic? What would you pay? And they might say, well, then I would expect to pay $4.99. Okay, well, what if this was upcycled? The conventional wisdom was they would want a discount from $1.99. Maybe it's $1.50. But in reality, what we're seeing is, if organic is $4.99, they might say, well, I would pay $3.99, closer to organic than conventional.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's dig into that a bit, because conventional wisdom on consumer perceptions and attitudes, purchase intent, these are really, honestly, we use these as hypotheses or theorems to write the rest of our plans against. And what you just told me is your research, as Drexel University's research, really turned a lot of that conventional wisdom on its head. So what do we do with that now?
Well, I think one of the key findings of our research was that the key element in getting consumers to pay more for upcycled products and to value upcycled products is for them to understand upcycled products. And you mentioned transparency before. I think that's really important. And also finding a succinct way to explain that these products are upcycled and what upcycled means. So that leads to some newer research, which is not out yet, but we've submitted for publication. And that's on a verified upcycled logo or stamp or some sort of third-party certification, which the Upcycled Food Association is working on, which would allow consumers to know, just as they know when they're buying an organic product or a GMO-free product or a gluten-free product, that there's some verification system that this product is indeed upcycled. And I think that is the piece that's the key to kind of normalizing and establishing a clear market and a clear category for upcycled food products. It's too ungainly to explain how you make your product and what percentage comes from food that would otherwise have been wasted and where you're sourcing it from. Consumers, a small percentage of consumers may want to know that information and may request it or may find it on your website. But the vast majority want a little seal or a little icon or a little something that can, in 2 seconds or less, say this is upcycled and this is good for environmental and frankly flavor reasons.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so the exploration of a verification label of some sort, kind of a bug or a call out claim that's verified by an association, is that a brand that is licensed to put that call out on their packaging shows the consumer that they've passed the association's scrutiny on it is indeed an upcycled item, and the consumer then has an understanding of a baseline of what is meant when they say we have upcycled ingredients here. Consumer already knows what that means.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. And so let's dig into kind of these verifications and label claims a little bit. There are a lot of bugs and call outs and claims that we product developers are asked to formulate to. And it could be really easy to then get washed in with all of the other claims and regulations that we're trying to apply to our products. And in the most blunt way, it kind of turns our products into NASCAR items. So how does the Upcycled Food Association, as a member of that association, how do you think that you could address it where it doesn't just get clumped in with all the rest of the other claims?
Yeah, and thanks for clarifying this. So I'm definitely not speaking on behalf of the association. I'm really a fan of a lot of what they're doing, and from my perspective, I think as a researcher and as an ally of manufacturers, but not as an upcycler myself or manufacturer of anything myself, what I want to do is give people clear options and give people sort of transparency and honest answers. So I think just as there are a variety of certifications available, and I love your NASCAR metaphor, a lot of food products could qualify for any number of certifications and verifications. I think it becomes a corporate decision and a marketing decision, which, if any, you would go for. And I can imagine there are, and I know, not I can imagine, I know there are some upcycled products that are very comfortable not being marketed as upcycled products. And, their strength of their business is in their brand and their flavor and their customer loyalty. And, they don't need to advertise anything beyond what they're currently doing. And they're showing strong growth and strong numbers. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I do think there are some products that may be newer to market that are looking for an environmental call out, that are looking to appeal to a different demographic, where having that upcycled verification could be valuable. And so I'm not really taking a position on whether a company should carry this certification or what the benefit is to that company. I don't have any research to know the answer to that. But what I do want to do is make sure that if a company wants to go for some sort of upcycled verification, first of all, that it's a meaningful one, that it's not just a pay-to-play kind of rubber stamp, but it's a real meaningful product. And then also to help that manufacturer communicate to consumers why this product is in fact a good one, from an environmental standpoint, from a social standpoint, and from a flavor and nutrition standpoint.
Thank you for that. Yes, I realized I was starting to ask you how the association plans to address something. And it's like, well, there's a lot of members there who have thoughts.
Yeah, you should definitely have those guys on the podcast, but it's not me. So I would say we're an ally. I mean, I'm chair of the Upcycled Foundation Board, which is the nonprofit arm of the Upcycled Food Association. But I'm not actually an Upcycled Food Association member because I'm not a manufacturer of upcycled food. So I would say my positioning really and our positioning at Drexel Food Lab is as an ally and supporter of the upcycled food movement more than directly an upcycler.
So let's talk about what the Drexel Food Lab is working on now. Obviously, you have clients that you do development projects with in a variety of different services. So let's start there. What does Drexel Food Lab do in general?
Yeah. So the lab itself is a part of our Department of Food and Hospitality Management, and it engages our students. We have a few programs: undergraduate degree in culinary arts and science, undergraduate degree in hospitality management, graduate degree in food science, and we have students involved in those from those majors in the food lab, as well as from other majors: nutrition, Over the years, we've had students in product design and environmental science and in other fields as well. And what we do is work with anyone, industry, government organizations, nonprofits, to do real-world food product development and culinary innovation work. And it's an opportunity for our students who are studying culinary arts and food science or other fields to get some real-world experience doing this work. One of the unique features is all of our work has some sort of good food social mission. And we use good food in a very broad way to mean some aspect of sustainability, health promotion, or access. So we tend not to take on projects that are highly technical or just new flavors or something, but rather what can we do with a highly sustainable product? What could we do with a byproduct from manufacture of something else? What can we do to get a particularly healthful food on the market? Those kinds of projects are really exciting for us.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Peas on Moss podcast. For more information about Peas on Moss and to inquire about being a guest or a sponsor on this show, check out the website peasonmoss.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Want more information about research work? Listen to the Culinologist series on Peas on Moss. If you liked what we're doing, please rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher, and please share the show with your friends. Our theme music was composed by Joshua Schaub. Editing is provided by Chris King at Moon Palace Productions. Peas on Moss, because mise en place makes me sound like I had it all together.